So, according to this article, Germany has a feminist foreign policy. And as you can see, it shows in the thumbnail two women with men in the background to highlight the fact that it is feminist. But the question is, like, what exactly is a feminist foreign policy? We live in the age where one of the most popular documentaries ever made is called What is a Woman? And no one seems to have the answer to that. It is a mysterious question. It's something akin to the dark age of mankind. Like we used to know what it is, but now we have advanced so much. The Horus heresy has happened, so we just don't know anymore what is a woman. But we still know what feminism is, apparently. Right, so like what is feminism? Well, it's an ideology, right? But what does it have to do with women? How can it promote the rights of women if we can't define what a woman is? And the answer is that it has absolutely nothing to do with women. It is an ideology which is going to put Germany last because it's the intersectional ideology. The intersectional ideology has its roots deep into patriarchy. Most of the original writers and the original professors were men. Cisgender and heteronormative, may I add. And it's an ideology that, as I mentioned, considers the nation state to be inherently evil. And it also considers the German people to be racist, bigoted, part of militarized power structures, etc., etc. But trying to use this ideology as foreign policy sounds bad. It doesn't look good on camera, right? So then you rebrand it. You say, well, it's actually about feminism. Even though you can't articulate what feminism is, even though you can't define what a woman is, if you disagree with the ideology, then you're not against the politicians that are putting Germany last while using the German taxpayer in order to do it. You're actually against womanhood. Right, so let's look a little bit at what a feminist foreign policy means. Well, it means, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. It's a policy that would disrupt colonial, racist, patriarchal, sexist, exploitative, capitalist, and militarized power structure. It would be accountable to those that it impacts, and it would allocate significant resources to achieve this vision. So this is exactly why you now have sort of a struggle on the left, because usually like the left is very clear. If you're a member of the left, like it is very clear what you need to support, right? Like you support BLM, you support trans rights. Like they're very clear. You don't have like much wiggle room. You can't J.K. Rowling your way out of this one. But when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East right now, well, you have Israel and Palestine, right? And if you look at the diversity statement, it says that they are going to disrupt colonial, racist, sexist, exploitative, and capitalist societies. Well, I'm sorry, but if you haven't looked at it, Israel is a militarized power structure, and it is capitalist. Benjamin Netanyahu is a patriarchal guy. Now, normally, no one has an issue with this. Like, if you're a liberal, you wouldn't have an issue with this. But if you're a champion of diversity, inclusion, and equity, then this is why you have protests for Palestine all across Europe. This is why in Germany you had, a couple of months ago, you had Jewish stars being painted on the houses where Jewish people live. This is why you have the rise of anti-Semitism. Is because of this ideology. It's because of the feminism that is being promoted as state policy at a state level. This doesn't come out of the ether. It's not like one day one minister thought about it. This has been in the works for decades. It has boiled in the academia. It has boiled on social media. It has boiled in all these places, and is now part of left-wing mindset. So it's not just that. If you keep looking at it, apparently they will say that a feminist foreign policy is informed by international human rights law and understanding of human rights through an inclusive and intersectional lens. A feminist foreign policy acknowledges that to push for human rights credibly and effectively at an international level. Again, like use this ideology to solve the conflict in Gaza. You're not going to reach the decision that the United States wants you to reach. This is my favorite, right? Because this is why I say that it's a law which is going to put Germany last. They want to disarm Germany, right? So disarm Germany with an explicit emphasis on pursuing and promoting feminist security. It would require the government to end arms production and exports and take meaningful steps towards investing into peace and not in war. This is either written by someone that is completely mentally deficient or someone that is a saboteur. There is no other way, right? Like, if you look at the history of mankind, what actually brings peace is having a strong military. Like, the nuclear weapon is what brought peace into Europe for so many years. This is why, right now, NATO and Russia are starting World War III. It's because nuclear weapons exist, mutually assured destruction exists, and that's how people behave rational. Like, in the schoolyard, the bully does not mess with the jock, because the jock is strong. But if the jock were to become weak, if he goes on a diet and he becomes a walking skeleton, then he gets bullied. And it's the same with international affairs. If a nation is strong and has a powerful military, then no one fucks with you. But if you're weak, then you become like Belgium in World War II. Oh, it's neutral. Does it have an army? No. The other possibility is sabotage. Like some, I don't know what group is looking at it and is like, we need to weaken Germany. So we're going to advocate for it to demilitarize itself. This was happening in the Cold War in the United States. Reagan actually put a stop to this talk. It was the idea, we need to demilitarize the United States. We need to remove the nukes from the United States in order to bring about world peace. And it's like, well, how are you going to do that if the Soviet Union exists? You're just saying that you want to surrender. You're having a mentality of capitulation, and you're going to allow the Soviet Union to dominate the rest of the world. And once it does that, then it can impose its will onto the American way of life. Now, I just want to point out, I'm no big fan of Germany, and I understand why they shouldn't have access to a military ever again, because like you look at the history of Europe, and not once, not twice, but thrice, they were using their military for nefarious means and causing conflict in the continent. And there was even a saying on Twitter, behind every single European tragedy, there was a smiling German. But if I was a German myself, if I was a German taxpayer, why would I ever advocate for the people that I paid their wages to represent me to have a policy that is at the detriment of my nation state? And they're like, okay, well, in order to protect our way of life, we're going to demilitarize. How does that make any sense? And of course, they want unchecked migration as well. So it recognizes the inherent violence of border checks. Like, as I mentioned before, this intersectional ideology believes that the nation state itself is evil. It believes that the power structure that represents you as a citizen, the power structure that gives you a voice as a citizen, is evil, and it needs to be dismantled. And the way you dismantle it is by tearing down the walls. If you want to dismantle a house, you tear down the walls. So by doing this, by saying that they believe that borders are inherently violent, they are basically advocating for the destruction of the German state with their foreign policy. So they're basically saying that it recognizes the inherent violence of border checks, detention, returns, profiling, and surveillance that other reinforce unequal power relations, reproduce colonial hierarchies, right? So like they believe that if you have a person that's an arms dealer, like Victor Bout from Russia, right? They believe that Victor Bout should not be profiled at the border. They believe that Victor Bout should be able to just go in through, even though he's got like an international arrest warrant. They believe that if Germany supports Israel right now, and due to the situation in the Middle East, like let's say you'd have a lot of Hamas sympathizers that want to come to the European Union, and they like actively support Hamas, the feminist policy of Germany believes that you shouldn't screen these people, you shouldn't give any background checks, And it is perfectly okay to just allow them to come in, even though they are coming in into a nation that's allied to Israel. Like and the feminists see no problem with this. In fact, if you even talk about it, if you even raise concerns, then you become like the ADL and they want to ban your political group because like too many people are now identifying with that. So, not only that, but when it comes to trade and investment, they also want to have like ESG investment, basically. Like Germany should invest into other countries that push for ESG. And you will notice in Africa, like countries that have like a high ESG number, you also have a high number of poverty. Like for instance, Southern Africa, right? It used to actually be an economic player in the region. It still is to a certain degree. But ever since it went with the ESG policies, you notice that they have constant blackouts. Due to that, crime has risen. The ideology itself, like the intersectional ideology, is causing friction among the various races that live there. To promote this on nations that are still developing is inhumane and cruel. Like to actually force these nations to try to bribe them to use this path, which leads to poverty, civil unrest, and strife, is beyond cruel. But again, you're doing it under the umbrella of feminism. It's the feminist foreign policy. I mean, it's nice, right? It sounds nice. So if it sounds nice, it can't be evil. I'll be reading more of this on my live stream. Hopefully you guys will join. There's a link into the pinned comment, and if you click it, it takes you there. And I'm really curious to know what you think, but what I'm also curious is, do Germans even know that this is a thing? Because most of the time, you know, like the politicians don't really try to make these public statements, like go on TV and actually talk about the policy and explain it to the people. I mean, you can find it if you go online, right? Like if you actually go online and you look for it, you find it. But are the people informed that this is what their own government thinks and this is how they're actually trying to run the nation? Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.